Hi, everyone. My name is Micah Bellieu, and I am CEO and founder of Fluency Corp, corporate language training globally, in person or online. And as a 15-year English teacher, and as someone who has learned Spanish, French, and Japanese as an adult, I would love to talk with you about the hardest things about learning English as a second language that I have seen with my clients. So let's face it, learning any language takes an enormous amount of motivation and dedicated time. But each language also has its own specific difficulties. Since most of our clients at Fluency Corp call us for help with improving their employees' English communication, today we're going to look at the challenges and difficulties of learning English as a second language. We hope this will help the English speakers understand more where their employees are coming from. So English is not a phonetic language, number one. A phonetic language is one in which you can look at a word in writing and know how to pronounce it. For example, Japanese is a phonetic language. It has 45 basic syllables that are always pronounced the same way. You know when you see the letter E in Japanese that it's going to be pronounced the same exact way every single time, like the E in the English word pet, so eh. If you're a Japanese speaker who's learning English and you see the word M-I-G-H-T, might, in print, your instinct will probably be to try to pronounce the letters G and H, which of course won't even get you close to the correct pronunciation of the word. If you work with non-native English speakers, you might hear them say the word answer, pronouncing the W in that word. So like Japanese, Spanish is also a phonetic language. The inconsistencies of how English is pronounced can really trip up Spanish speakers learning English if they're learning in an academic way, which is reading first, which is why we do speaking. So when I was teaching a beginner English class in Mexico, one of my students pronounced the English word nose as no sé. I understand why the student arrived at that pronunciation. Every syllable has a specific sound in Spanish, no sé. So why would the letter E be silent at the end of nose? And why would the S sound like a Z? And of course, the Spanish phrase, no sé, means I don't know. And so he was making a joke as well. This is why it's important to learn English by listening, not just by reading an academic. At Fluency Corp, we have many clients who come to us after a decade or more of book learning English, but they cannot be understood in English because their pronunciation has been wrong the whole time, nor can they understand when someone else speaks because it doesn't sound like what they anticipated. This is because they've been trying to apply the rules of their native language and the phonetics to English. Learning English through reading and writing can often be the reason your accent when speaking English is challenging to understand. It's because you don't know what the words actually sound like because you've spent very little time listening to the language. So if you are learning English, we highly suggest watching TV and movie shows. TVs or movies, or learning with a native speaker at first. This helps you hear the language and feel its rhythm before diving into books and grammar. Just like children, they listened for 5, 6, 7 years before they really started reading and writing. Very few language training companies or schools start off with listening and speaking only because it's very challenging to convince adults that they shouldn't see the language from class 1. Although after over a decade of being in this business, I can instantly tell who is someone who was listening first before learning to read and write, or who focuses on TV and movie time instead of book time. Their pronunciation and their syntax, which is the order of the words, is always on point. It really pays off in the long run to listen first. It also helps to learn like a kindergartner. In U.S. kindergartens, we learn phonetic pairs. At Fluency Corp, in our accent reduction classes, we show you that words rhyme in English, even if they have a completely different spelling. And we also talk about what letter groups go together and what they sound like. For example, word, bird, and herd all rhyme. A lot of times people will try to say them differently, like woerd, beard, and haired. That's not correct, so we group them. Most people learning English try to pronounce each one differently because they're spelled differently, which would make sense. Another reason English is tricky is phrasal verbs. Tackling communication in English is the language has a lot. The main problem is that they have a lot of phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are verbs with 2 or more words. They can be extremely confusing to people learning English as a second language. So for example, phrasal verbs like take over, take on, take up, take off, take care of, all have completely different meanings. One tiny preposition can be the difference between taking over a country and taking on a new challenge. Most other languages have a specific verb for each of these meanings, not one verb, take, used with tons of different prepositions that determine the meaning. Since most English learners learn from textbooks, they don't really dig into a lot of phrasal verbs, so they're not prepared when they take a new job in the US and suddenly everyone is using these phrasal verbs instead of the more formal or possibly less descriptive synonyms like take over, conquer, take on a new challenge, to start, to take off, to leave in an airplane. This is another reason it helps to learn English by listening. When you watch movies or TV shows in English and talk to native speakers, you hear natural conversations with phrasal verbs, and you learn in real-life context to use them. Another big obstacle, context. English definitely has its share of quirks that can frustrate language learners, but Fluency Corp achieves rapid results with our clients who are learning English as a second language. Whether in person or online, our English classes are always taught by native speakers. Employees, students, receive plenty of conversational practice and utilize materials that are relevant to the job and their life, books, movies, TVs in English, to help them understand how the language is truly spoken. I hope this helped.